Bishop. Twitter only has 280 characters. How the hell can I get to know anyone?
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
excellent.
Absolutely.
Boom,
Thank
boom.
you for that. Yep. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good day, and welcome to yet another edition of the Digital Download,
Which is
the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live.
nice.
This week, we're going back to our original roots for the format of the show. We will be asking, well, what have we learned in social and digital this week? And each of us will share various things that we've found from around the internet. But before we get into that, let's kick off with some introductions. Alex.
Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be, or good evening. My name is Alex Abbott. I'm the founder of Sapiro and a proud DLA Ignite partner. Hello.
Excellent. Thank you. Adam.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. But as you can see, because it says so there. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite and a proud partner of these two gentlemen.
Thank you very much. And myself, I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, and I too am a proud DLA Ignite partner. So, who wants to kick us off? I have a few things to share, but I know others have talked about bringing some things as well. Robert says, small panel today. Was everyone else drinking last night? It's that summer hiatus thing.
You can start because I'm going to have a rant at some point. You know that.
Okay.
Well,
So
exactly.
We can save
So,
that up.
all right. So then let me start with this. Adam, I know you did. Alex, maybe did you and audience, did you see Simon Kemp's Digital 2023 July Global StatShot report?
I did. Hot off the press.
Excellent. Yes, he and the team at datareportal.com always do a terrific job of collecting, analyzing, and sharing the latest digital trends. Now, the report itself is over 300 pages long. I haven't had time to digest all of that, but fortunately, he did put together a video explaining his top 10 takeaways. I encourage you to go check it out at datareportal.com. But I wanted to share with you two of the top 10 things that stood out to me. First, at number 5, I'm surprised Barbie hasn't joined the panel. Yes, that should be number 1. I was trying to find a good Barbenheimer, but I just let it go. So at number 5, let me see if I can pull this up.
Which is,
Number 5 is people under the age of 55 are now more likely to get their news from social media than they are to get it from television. Yes, this is the one I wanted to share. So here we're looking at the social platforms used to access digital news. Simon went on to share that according to the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism, 57% of the people under 55 now use social media for news, compared with just 48% of this age group who get their news from television, broadcast TV.
Yeah, but don't we have to be careful there, Rob? Because my 75-year-old father-in-law, he also gets a lot of news from Facebook, which is quite often fake, and we have heated discussions around.
So it's interesting that you bring that up, Alex, because I went on and did a little bit more research myself, because like you say, Facebook, or is it Fakebook? So this stat was eye-opening to me. In terms of the sources, Facebook tops the rankings at 41%. That's greater than 10 times more than the number of people that use LinkedIn for their sources of news. So excuse me a moment while I change our broadcast signal to the other platform. um, this was also concerning to me. So naturally, I had to Google it. I asked Google, how reliable is the news I read on Facebook? The featured snippet that Google had at the top was from a Medium article, which itself is dubious at times. But there were other articles addressing that question from sources that I would deem as reliable. However, most of those were dated between 2018 and 2020. So they felt a bit dated, honestly. The results also included a link to, in fact, from Facebook corporate pages. One was titled, "Helping ensure news on Facebook is from trusted sources," and the other was tips to spot false news. So even Facebook is aware of the problem that they're dealing with. And that's when I came to the same realization that you had, Alex. I realized that the news doesn't differentiate posts by Fox News, NBC, or the BBC versus posts from my conspiracy theory spewing in-laws. To some, both may be considered quote unquote news. And to others, only one of those sources is legitimate. I'll leave it to you to figure out which one, but I will say this: pray for us.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of the challenge is that increasingly the mainstream media is not an impartial news channel. So when I was growing up, I genuinely believed that the BBC was a bastion of honesty and impartial reporting. And as I've got older, I've realised that even at the time, that certainly was not the case. And now it is even less so the case. And I think that the challenge that people have is that there are multiple sources and everybody's lying to a greater or lesser extent. And some of that is consciously misleading people. And some of that is unconsciously misleading people. You know, without trying to polarize the conversation further, you know, if you're in America and you live in a blue state, then lots of the news that is more liberal, you live in a red state, most of the news which is more liberal seems like it's fake news because you are in an echo chamber where everybody is saying the same things. And conversely, if you live in a blue state, lots of things that you hear from the GOP and news that reports that in a favorable way seems like it's fake news. And the problem is that I think everybody, irrespective of your political belief, would acknowledge that, and politics is a really good example because it's so divisive, that there are extremes in reporting. You know, in this country, we have the Daily Mail on one side and we have the Guardian on the other. And whichever one of those, depending on your political leaning, you see one of those as being very slightly left or right of truth. So, you know, if you're a staunch socialist, the Guardian is very slightly left of truly accurate reporting. Whereas if you're, a very strong Tory, then the Daily Mail is only very slightly right of what absolute truth is. And the problem is, without any impartial reference point, without any calibration of what's true and what isn't, you can't begin to have an impartial judge of these things. You know, one of the key cognitive dissonances that humans have is that you believe that news and what people read and what is purported to be true by the news channels has an effect on everybody's perception of the world, except yours. You're actually immune to this stuff, and you're the one that's the one that is impartial about these things. And you know, the as the old saying goes, there are three versions of events. There's your version, there's my version, and there's the truth. And I think that part of the problem is that you as an individual, you as an enlightened person that is prepared to at least give both sides of the argument airtime, you as an individual, you find it very difficult to differentiate where the truth is in these statements. So how can that be done at scale? I was interviewed I don't know, before COVID now, where Facebook had said that they were going to be measuring posts to try to weed out untrue posts, you know, fake news and whatever. And I said in the news review, the fundamental problem with that is that they've got 2 billion people on Facebook. So how many people, if everybody posts once a day, that's 2 billion posts a day. So how are you going to consume those 2 billion posts a day, then fact check those 2 billion posts a day, then moderate those 2 billion posts per day? Because if you don't have a difference in opinion, you don't get any debate. So you've got to allow a little bit of latitude around what actual fact is. So actually, this is not something that can be addressed that easily. And I think that part of the reason that people are choosing now to consume the news from social media is that they're consuming it when they want it and in the way that they want it. And B, if I'm going to be lied to, Rob, frankly, I'd rather be lied to by you. You know what I mean? Just because at least I like you. And I think that people have become very disillusioned with their inability to grasp truth and what is truth out there.
So it's interesting that you said growing up you thought the broadcast news was impartial.
It was truth. Yeah.
It was truth. Yes, thank you. Because that's how I grew up as well. And because it was truth, my belief told me, that made it impartial. It wasn't until it became more extreme, especially regarding political reporting, that I started to recognize that there is a bent to it, regardless of which outlet that you're learning from. And instead of picking sides, I generally tap out.
Well, and the same, you know, this, so I was reading a little while ago now, maybe a few months ago, trying to remember the source. I think it was Trust Radius had done some research into, buyer confidence. And it's so from a B2B perspective, and the fact that research, vendor blogs, websites are falling down the priority list of trusted sources that buyers actually use to inform their decision, because it's difficult to believe, you know, what's written. And, you know, without naming any names, even some of the most well thought about research businesses are paid to carry out research, and then is actually, you know, the conclusion of the research is, funnily enough, aligned to the value that the tech company that sponsored them to do it values. Yeah. What do you believe anymore?
Well, I think that so I'm incredibly impressed with my son. So he is one of the few people that genuinely reads from multiple sources. So, you know, most of us would read from mainstream sites, but he reads from, so for the war in Ukraine, for example, he reads mainstream media that is available in this country, and he reads Ukrainian mainstream media, and he reads Russian mainstream media, and he reads Indian mainstream media, which is more impartial than us, but slightly more aligned to Russia than we are. And from this, he has at his fingertips a huge number of facts about parallels and kind of hypocrisies in how both sides are talking about the conflict and both sides are behaving. The problem with that is that it requires a huge amount of effort and a huge amount of open mind. He's 19, so he hasn't yet been programmed in the way that we've been programmed to have this kind of ironclad belief system, because all of us are subject to 20, 30, 40, 50 years of being spoon-fed someone else's view of the world. And I think the challenge is that, that as you said, Alex, everybody's got an agenda here. So whether we're talking about news and how people consume it, that's why people are not buying mainstream media and consuming mainstream media in the way they were, and whether that's buying reports. Even if you are unwittingly biased, you are biased. Because anything that doesn't align with your compass for what should be true seems like it's fake. And even if you're not deliberately misleading people, you throw out news that is fake. If somebody says to you, the Earth's flat, you don't actually read a lot further than that because it's not the case.
Yeah.
One assumes it isn't the case. But there are so many things like that where there are those fundamental cornerstones that you say, well, I don't actually need to delve into that because I know that's not true.
Yeah.
And that informs these biases that we all have.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've started using. I don't want to go off track, so I want to come back to the to Simon Kemp's report because I've got a point I wanted to raise in relation to that. But in recent weeks, I've started using a source of evidence-based research by the Oxford Review. And there's some really interesting stuff in there, and what they typically do is take the academic research that's being done all around the world, thousands and thousands and thousands of pieces, and they sift through it all, and then they turn it into common English that an average business Joe like me can understand, because I would probably find it very frustrating trying to read an academic report and understand it fully. But there's some really interesting stuff that's coming out of there, and what I'm finding is it fills me with confidence to know that it's the truth. All right, from an academic's perspective, but there's no commercial agenda.
So there's no commercial agenda, but that doesn't make it true either, is what I'm starting to recognize. And much for the reason that Adam just shared. If it's not aligned with what I believe, I'm going to stop reading. Even as an academic, I'm likely to have certain biases. So going back to the Earth is flat. Well, you know what? I'm just going to stop there and move on to the next thing. So it does influence that which gets reported and such. The other thing that I wanted to share from his report was the top story. The number of active social media users, social media user identities. So they did their best to try to suss out how many social media profiles belong to individuals, and recognize that individuals can have more than one. But what they came up with was the number of active social media user identities is now equal to more than 60% of the global population. And according to Simon's analysis, with a total of 4.88 billion distinct identities, we're using social media platforms in numbers greater than we ever have. 60.6% of the world's population is what he calculated that to be. So again, I did some research of my own based on that. And I learned that according to the World Bank, in 2022, 65% of the world's population was between the ages of 15 and 64. What that means is if someone in the world is between the ages of 15 and 64, there's a greater than 90% likelihood of them using social media. That's worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what I've taken from this report that is linked to that point?
What's that?
I think this is astonishing, by the way. It was Simon's number 5. Sorry, number 6. Number 6. You've already done number 5. The world's digital gender gap.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Women and 19% less likely to use the internet than men. I think that was the exact stat. And in order for us to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, 100 million women a year need to start using the internet, which would be a 60% increase on the current growth trend for women using the internet. Now, granted, I think it's mainly South Asia, perhaps the Middle East, that these, where these women are not using the internet. But I think that I think governments and corporates need to be doing more to empower women to use the internet, the same way men are doing.
Right. I mean, if we can waste time, so can they.
Well, it's we I mean, outside of the download, right? We strongly recommend that people, professionals within business, learn to walk digital corridors confidently, safely, and effectively. And to think that to think there are many women out there that worry about how to use the internet, let alone social media, or for whatever reason are not using the internet, let alone social media. There's a massive opportunity.
Absolutely. I like Sandy's comment. Well, there's a business idea.
Yeah.
Did anyone else have observations from that report or something else that you wanted to bring up for discussion?
Yeah, I think that one of the things that came out of the report for me was how little the percentages had shifted. So, what we're seeing growth in almost all areas. So, more people are signing up. The percentage of people that the identities as opposed to people on the earth have increased. The penetration of the platforms in different geographies has increased. What I found surprising was that there's a very slight decline in the amount of time the average global time spent on social media per day per person, from I think 2 hours 29 minutes to 2 hours 27 minutes now. So it's only a tiny shift, but one of the things that I think is quite interesting is that the market has obviously, the environment has become much more mature, and therefore it's stabilized. So we're not seeing any volatility in terms of platforms coming up and coming down, growth in certain regions, because basically everybody's here now. And I think that whilst it has removed the opportunity for quick wins for entrance into this marketplace, what it does mean is that this is now increasingly becoming a hygiene behavior in terms of having conversations. So every country, people get news and fact finds from YouTube and Facebook and every other one. Every country has got people in these platforms. Every country, people are having conversations, and significant conversations, because the average time spent per user is 2.5 hours per day nearly. So, this has moved from being any whiff of being a flash in the pan or something which I can sit on my hands and wait for this to develop. It has developed, it is mature, and every organization needs to be putting this front and center of their behavior.
Yeah. In fact, the growth rate of users adopting social media, I noticed in the report, had actually accelerated slightly in the last 3 months. And I don't know if Threads has had anything to do with that, with 150 million new users within the first 7 days, as fast as Chat GPT, apparently, that growth. But it's astonishing when to think about how many users there are on social media, yet there's still an acceleration of user adoption.
Well, I think the thing that's amazing is not how many users there are, but how many people there are that aren't users.
Right.
And despite the fact that the pool of people who are not on social media is getting ever smaller, still the rate of growth is accelerating, albeit only slowly now. So the growth is still strong, but the acceleration in growth is not strong, despite the fact that every day that goes past, there are fewer people that aren't on social media. So the pool that you're drawing that growth from is ever smaller. And I think
a couple of comments I want to bring up. First, Zachary shared, have a look at this civic science study, and he shared a link to that. So thank you for that, Zachary. I will check that out. And then, of course, we hear from Andrew. We all know why men use the internet more than women. I'll leave it to Andrew to figure that out.
Betting sites.
Yeah, that must be it. And Sandy shares, I know how many women gamers who don't use social media. Interesting that you bring that up, Sandy. One of the other elements in the report was talking about gaming and the perception of the gamer and the demographics of the gamer. The data doesn't support the perception, or in other words, there were gamers across all generations.
Yeah, it's and what was interesting was the 55 to 64-year-old bracket was there was a big increase in terms of the number of people gaming, and interestingly, smartphones was the device of choice.
Right.
And I guess unsurprisingly, was it 30% of those games that were being played were quizzes to keep the mind active, right?
Andrew replied, it's to watch this show and that album, of course. Yes, that's exactly it.
Of course.
Thank you.
There is a hunger for us. That's what we're basically saying.
Right. That must be it. But I wanted to come to Mark's statement as well. There are a number of my close family members who are choosing to walk away from social media due
Don't
to
you say that. That's utter rubbish. I won't tolerate.
I understand that completely, but to anyone who says that, I do. First of all, I respect that, but I want to remind you, you can control what's in your social media feed.
Yeah,
and you can temper that toxicity. But walking away is probably the easiest way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, there is the danger that you also walk away from all of the other benefits that social brings. You know, the relationships that you've developed over the last 5 years from people you went to secondary school with, the family members who are far flung, the old friends you used to work with, the party that's going on in the next street that you didn't know about if you weren't on Facebook. And unfortunately, when you cut out the bad, you also run the risk of cutting out the good as well.
Right.
I mean, I think that one of the things that this report has thrown up for me, and when I talk to individuals and organizations, I will raise the visibility of this particular line of thinking, which is that it actually doesn't matter whether you like any of this stuff or not. It doesn't matter whether or not you are naturally a social person, whether or not you're comfortable publishing content, and whether or not you enjoy doing that. What matters is the fact that everybody is here, and don't any longer have a choice. It's like not having a telephone or not having a website if you're a business. And one of the things that I see as being kind of simultaneously an obvious move that people need to make, but also quite concerning, is that share of search engine usage, Google is 92.64% of the search engine market, and the next nearest competitor they have is Bing with 2.7% or 2.8%. And what that highlights is that there are players in town that you cannot avoid, and you have to base your strategy on where the people are, because clearly, if you are optimizing your website for Google, then you're appealing to 93% of the marketplace, and if you're optimizing it for DuckDuckGo, you're optimizing it for 0.5% of the market. And the challenge here is that sometimes you have to dance with the devil, don't you? Even if it's an organization you don't like. I'm not particularly anti-Google, but whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter, whichever platform it is that you don't like, you may not have the choice.
Right.
You're on mute, Alex.
There we go. Whilst
at least we weren't live when you were talking, when you weren't on mute.
Yeah. Whilst we think about or ponder that, Adam, I just want to let Sandy Adam know that we each pair our channels, so not everybody can see every comment.
That's right.
So I've pasted Zachary Nippert's study on my profile where the post is, where I've posted about this event.
Right.
So if you want to visit my profile, there's the link to Zachary's study, or the study Zachary shared.
But I think that from our perspective, every organisation needs to look at Simon Kemp's report, and they need to consider what try to stand back and consider what the ramifications of the data in that report is saying to them in their business. When Tim and I were in Singapore just before COVID, we were flying down to work with a potential reseller there, and Simon is based in Singapore, so dropped him a note saying, "Hello, mate. And I'd never met him before at that point. Hello, mate. We're in Singapore. Do you fancy meeting up?" And he said, "Yeah. Come to my." I think it was to my club, I seem to remember. And we met up with him, and he was having an audience with one person after another. And he was such a charming man, so generous with his insights and his thoughts on this. And his belief is that, as ours is, that there is only one game in town anymore. You have to be optimizing your behavior on social, because that's where everybody is.
Yeah. For me, that was the biggest takeaway when I listened to Simon Kemp's. He's as you said, Rob, he's created this lovely little kind of top 10 video to better understand the report, unless you want to read through 200 pages.
300.
Okay, 300. Yeah. 300 pages. That was the biggest takeaway for me, was wow, everyone is on social media. Everyone, almost everyone. And still, I'm going to say people, but generally, most people within business, in the professional world, don't understand how to navigate social media in order to help realize their commercial objectives. And I think that's because they're still trying to meet their commercial objectives, as opposed to using social media as the tool that it is, which is a platform to meet other people, or sell to other people.
Yeah, and as we talk to more and more organizations, some people push back against this overwhelming tide of you have to be here, by saying, but I don't want to be there. But actually, that's not a choice any of us can make anymore. If you are in any kind of customer facing role, you have to be putting your best foot forward on social, because simply saying, well, I don't want to share I don't want to publish posts on social is like saying, well, I don't want to have an email address and I don't want to have a telephone. And you of course you don't need to have a LinkedIn profile if you're going to be a carpenter, working in a forest somewhere making crafts. You don't. But actually, if you're in B2B sales or you're in the corporate world, you certainly don't have any opportunity to not be here and be successful.
Even that carpenter needs somebody to hire them. And
well, very true.
It might not be the best platform. LinkedIn, that is, might not be the best platform for them to make others aware of what they do, but there is a digital platform or several that could do that better than simply word of mouth. And that was one of the other things that came out of Simon's top 10 as well. I forget where it fell on the list, but word of mouth was surpassed by Alex. You've got it.
Yeah, number 4 on his list. Didn't quite make top 3, but social media has overtaken word of mouth when it comes to introducing people to brands and products.
Right.
Wow. And for how many years have marketers been saying word of mouth is the most effective form of marketing?
Right.
Now, go on.
No. I was going to draw this to a close because that was a perfect segue. But go on, say what you're going to say.
Well, no, but then I also took away from Simon's report how much advertising is done on social media, and we're talking about social media being used as a platform for people to meet people. Yet businesses are spending vast amounts of money advertising on social media, and how much of that is actually effective.
Well, anybody that doesn't follow him should follow one of our associates, a guy called Stephen Sumner, who is often sharing stuff about ad fraud and how clients are not necessarily getting what they think they're getting when they buy advertising on any digital platform.
Yeah. Anyway, so, you were going to say?
Yes, I was going to say that a month ago, I went to a live event. It was a B2B exhibition, not a huge one. Maybe the company running it and sponsoring it, and maybe 20, maybe a few more small stands.
It's unlike you, though, Adam, right?
Sorry?
It's unlike you to go to an event.
Yeah, and I'll explain what the fallout from that has been. So I went there because we were engaged to speak at this event.
Okay, so you had to
go. Yeah, and we would have gone anyway because we met some nice people there, and there was some good networking opportunities there. A couple of which may lead somewhere, and certainly it's nice to reconnect with people that we haven't seen for a while. So that's fine. It was not a waste of a day, but the value came from the anecdotal conversations. I'm queuing to get a coffee, you're queuing to get a coffee next to me, and I go, "Oh, hi, Alex, not seen you for ages. How's it going?" Then we go and sit down and we chat, we catch up. That's incredibly valuable. And actually, still, even in the digital world, it's quite hard to emulate that in exactly the same way that it happens with a chance encounter in the physical world. But you know how events are structured. So even though I'm there in a professional capacity, I'm still registered as an attendee to the event. So you've got 20 companies, all of whom have got stands, all of whom have been given the list of attendees and their contact details, because that's part of what you pay for when you pay £1,000 or £10,000 for a space to put your stand. And that was a month ago. And today I received my 6th email from one of those companies.
Okay.
a company that I didn't speak to, I didn't pick up a free gift from, I didn't opt into their email list, I didn't ask to receive any communications. So immediately after the exhibition, I got a thanks for attending. I said, well, I say immediately, a couple of days later. Then I got we're going to be at this event next. Why don't you come and visit us there? Then I got their bi-weekly newsletter. Then I got their, here's how you can find our products and services on our website. I mean, I ask you, if you've got to give someone a map to find their way around a website, you must have a fundamental problem. Then they sent me a video, and then they sent today their fortnightly newsletter again. Now, this is the fundamental problem with how most organizations market themselves. You know, what they do is they get a little bit of value, i.e. my contact details, and then they literally grab it by the throat and they wring the life out of it.
Yeah.
And the belief that you've emailed me immediately after the show, you've emailed me again, you've emailed me again, you've emailed me again, you've emailed me again, because the next email, that's going to be the one that's going to trigger me to pick up the phone and go, oh, well, I didn't know how brilliant you were.
No, I think it's 28, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, yes, very possibly. And I mean, I suppose I should be thankful for the fact that my phone hasn't started ringing with these people cold calling me. But it's not even like it's bad practice or worst practice. You know, it doesn't matter how naive you are about comms and marketing and even sales. You must, in your heart of heart, know that if somebody has not responded to the first email, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, or the fifth, the sixth one is not going to make them go, oh, great, I need to be working with you guys. And, you know, it is a company now that if anybody mentions them, I will say, oh, yeah, I wouldn't want to work with those people. You know, it's turned me from somebody that was a floater, an agnostic, somebody that was neither a detractor nor a champion for their brand, into somebody that I would recommend people actively not get involved with this company, because if they get your details, you won't be able to get away from them. And I think it's a good metaphor for how desperate so many organizations are. You know, we've got this tiny little glimmer of something, you know, half a dozen email addresses that we've not seen before. So now we're going to try battering them into submission. And
But
amazing.
You're confusing marketing and sales. You understood each of those emails and the content within. I presume that means you opened each of those emails. That sends a flag to the marketing team that says, got another one, because they're measured on email opens and impressions and clicks. The sales team is the one that...
to write the blog article that I wrote that I haven't yet published, I did in fact go back and open all the emails.
and now you've said, I'm receptive to these emails. So you're going to reinforce that behavior, and they're going to continue to email you.
Well, they might ramp up the frequency now, mightn't they?
There's not
much opportunity for that, but
yeah, that's how their performance is measured, because somewhere we think that there's this fuzzy math that tells us this marketing activity leads to this sales result. And it happens enough that, yes, we're going to continue to do this because we don't know anything else to do. Marketing is there to build the brand awareness. And each time you open that email, you're reinforcing brand awareness. And you might not buy today. You might not buy tomorrow. You might not buy for 3 years. But when you do buy, marketing's going to say, see, I did that. Now, sales is going to say, I did that.
Well, neither of them are going to be saying that.
Well,
I'm not going to be buying. But I get
right.
The point. Yes, I get the point.
So I worked on the kind of the B2C side of the house for many years, worked for different companies that actually provided email marketing technology. And there was one thing that marketers cared about the most after revenue, and that was the unsubscribe rate. You know, the desire to keep the unsubscribe rate under 1%, the focus that they would want to put on ensuring that their customer base wasn't over emailed because they would zone out or get peed off or unsubscribe. Why is it that B2B marketers appear not to feel the same way as those B2C marketers?
Well, I think that the B2B business world is very different, isn't it? You know, it's different because it's a high complexity sale. You know, I do not respond well to advertising. The fact remains that I still buy things from adverts I see on Instagram. You know, we all do. Be that rucksacks or training shoes or those special forces belts or whatever it is that we go, oh, that's what my life's been missing. I need one of those. But actually, the fact that they're useless, either because they're no good at what they claim to be doing, or they're useless because you have no use for them, and you realize that after you've bought it. The fact remains that it doesn't matter. If you spend $10 on a belt, or even $100, or even $200 on a belt, actually it's not mission critical. If you spend $2 million on a new ERP system, it is mission critical to your business, because you've got all of the associated costs. And I think that there's a big difference in terms of how much people have to be pursuing and guiding people through that process. And B2B businesses tend to be very much structured, don't they, on a quarter by quarter basis. Alex, we're getting to the end of the quarter. You need to bring in some business. What are you going to do? Oh, well, I'm going to email everybody on my database again. Do you think that's the right thing to do? No, but at least I can tell my boss that I've emailed everybody on my database again.
Yeah, but surely if the deal value is worth 2 million, then more focus, more care, more attention needs to be taken in ensuring that you're not upsetting your audience by over mailing them in the same way that you've been over mailed.
Yeah, but I think for many in many B2B organizations, the heat is on, isn't it? The pressure is turned up on the sales team. And actually, I think, as we discuss often in the sales TV show that we do, the challenge is that salespeople often, and I had this when I worked in the corporate world, people would say things like, I think I'll have another 6 or 9 months before I get laid off. So actually, you're not worried about priming the pump for 2 years down the road. The business should be, but you're not incentivized to do that. You're incentivized to close today at all costs. And if you close today and you make your number, you've got another quarter before you have to worry about finding another job. And that seems to be a repeating pattern. And that drives this self-harming kind of behavior that individuals have in this space, where they will prostitute everything for getting one more conversation today, rather than saying, what matters is not how many conversations I have today, but how many conversations I have every day. And that's a world apart in terms of how that's positioned in someone's mind, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, needless to say, I will not be buying or recommending from that particular company. Not unless they email me a few more times.
Yeah.
There will be that day. Oh, that's exactly what I needed. If only I knew you existed.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is something that we see time and again, isn't it? Organizations that are completely at sea now because all of the things that they have been doing simply don't work anymore. And it's not to say that marketing doesn't work, but it's reasonable to say that marketing doesn't work in its current form for most organizations. Hence the fact they've got no pipeline.
Yeah. Can I just say, every day is a school day, and I have learned something on the call today. Thank you to Robert Matson for talking about the Rashomon effect in one of his comments. I didn't know what that was until I looked it up. The Rashomon effect describes how parties describe an event in a different and contradictory manner, which reflects their subjective interpretation and self-interested advocacy. Interesting. It reminds me a little bit about the dog in the yard question that I got in some leadership training many years ago, and the importance of communication. To your point earlier on, Adam, if I was to ask you both, picture a dog in a yard, a very simple instruction, you'd think about the same things, but you'll both, I'm sure, think about a different dog, a different yard, a different fence. And
No, I'm thinking about a dachshund in your back garden, as it happens, Alex, which is exactly what you're thinking about.
Yeah, it doesn't help that you've seen photos of my miniature dachshunds and my garden.
Yes, exactly. You, the brand is strong in my mind because of all the emails that you send me. That'll be it.
Thank you, Robert.
Yes, I like Andrew's comment, his last comment.
This one?
Yeah. So I don't know if you get that in America, but we used to get it in this country, and it would be, and Billy Connolly used to do a sketch about this, and for more elderly people, there's like a giant slipper that comes up to your knees that you put both feet in, and sometimes it can be an electrically heated one, which has a little thermostatic control on it, and it's so when you're sitting down at the end of the evening watching TV, your feet don't get cold. And Billy Connolly said that he thought it would be really funny to buy 2 of these and put them by the back door side by side, because if anyone broke into the house, they'd go, "Oh my God, the person who lives here must be enormous."
Yeah, that's it, Chris. You were in the same training program.
So Chris, hello, mate. What dog did you imagine? And what dog did you imagine, Alex?
Yeah. Well, at the time or now?
Well, at the time, of course.
Yeah. I don't think I can remember. I do remember it was probably something like a Labrador. I do remember a red shed and a white picket fence and green grass and a fairly simple patio. Yeah.
Right. So let's see what Chris imagined in that very training session.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Have a good weekend.
But yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? How we all draw different things from the facts that we're given. Yeah, there we go. So he was on pretty much the same page as you, obviously.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how we all assemble these different snippets in a different way, isn't it? And draw different conclusions from it. And I think that that's part of the point. I think that we all, whether we mean to or not, live in an echo chamber. And we see this as individuals when we're consuming news. You join groups that are groups about things that matter to you. Whether that's your hobbies or your beliefs or whatever it may be. You join groups of like-minded people so that you can be have your beliefs ratified and supported. And organizations do it as well. They nice. Organizations do it as well. They surround themselves with people that pat them on the back for the job they're doing. And I think, I keep bringing it back to kind of organizational behavior, because people will be people, whether I agree with your views or not. Actually, that's not the issue. But organizations have a duty of care to the people that work within them. And a lot of the challenge that we're seeing at the moment is that organizations genuinely believe that they're doing a good job. But the acid test is not how many clicks. It isn't how many views. It isn't how many attendees to your webinar. And it isn't how many downloads of your white paper. That's not what matters. What matters is how many people are asking for proposals and then subsequently buying from you.
Yeah.
And every organization that I talk to says they have no pipeline. Not pipeline's a bit weak. They have no pipeline. I've had 2 conversations in the last week with organizations that have said we have 0 pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're a sales leader and all of your team are out there treading the boards, what can you do if you've got nothing in the pipe?
And it's also back to the what to believe discussion, because some sales leaders are told that their reps, their teams have pipeline, when if you really stress test that pipeline, they have, at best a small pipeline.
Yeah.
Or the viability is small. I can fill a pipeline with whatever. You give me a number, I will hit it, unless it's a sales number.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it? That we need to be measuring the right things to drive the right behavior to get the outcome that we want. And it's all very well to say, we're hitting all of our KPIs, your personal KPIs, but we see it time and again, that doesn't stop people from being laid off when there's no money.
Yeah.
Does that mean the KPIs are wrong?
Well, it does, but I think it's more than the KPIs being wrong. I think it's the whole belief system around how those KPIs, what those KPIs are indicative of. That's the problem, isn't it? So once upon a time, there was a direct correlation between how many times you picked up the phone and dialed somebody, how many people you got to speak to, and how much business you got as a result of that. Now, it doesn't matter how many times you dial, nobody wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
So that whole avenue is now a cul-de-sac.
I think the other,
Go on. Sorry.
The other issue I see is culture. So, culturally within organizations, an environment, where you can freely challenge the way people are doing things, to encourage healthy debate and then try new things, seems to be absent from so many organizations when we think about sales and marketing, because so many people within these businesses, salespeople and customer success alike, are being told to continue doing the things that hadn't worked before and still won't work today.
Yeah, and I think that taking that step back and saying, when people say I'm really busy, and this is whilst this is a comment about salespeople, it's not an attack on salespeople. Salespeople say I'm really busy, I'm doing everything you're telling me to do, Alex. But the output is there's still no pipeline, there's still no money. So whatever you're doing isn't working. So the idea, I haven't got time to do other stuff. Well, you have, because you don't need to do any of the things you're doing because they're not working. And I had a conversation with a sales leader just this week, and I said to them, I'll wager that everyone in your sales team is really good at both closing and administering the sale. And they said, yep, they're really good. I said, so why have you got no pipeline? And they said, I don't. And what it boils down to is the fact they're not having any conversations. So, you can be the best closer in the world. You can be the best at administering the sale and navigating the politics of your company and theirs. But ultimately, if you're not talking to people, there is no opportunity for you to deploy those skills you've spent 20 years learning. And that's the challenge that organizations have to address.
Yeah.
Not
the messaging, not more value selling.
No, and not
generating new content.
And not we're going to do some role play on how you can close a sale, because until you've actually got somebody in front of you that you can sell to, you can be the best salesperson in the world, but you're never able to demonstrate that.
Yeah, I've got a couple more facts from Simon's report to share.
Brilliant.
Before we close out, video accounts for 3/4 of all cellular data. I think on average now 20 gigabytes per month are used by every single cellular phone. I forget the total number. It's a big number that is consumed globally. And OpenAI had 300 million unique visits in May. What's interesting is that dropped by 6% in June. So the big question now is, has OpenAI started to lose traction, or is it just because, again, Threads took center stage?
Don't know. We are coming up to the top of the hour, and before we get cut off, I just wanted to share with everyone, first and foremost, thank you to the audience for the active participation. And if you have something to say, we would love to hear from you. We would love to have you on the show. This has been the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.